Hi, everybody. It's Kay. Hope you're doing well. So, this is Bible story time, and today I want to take a closer look at Tamar. So, some of you may be wondering who is Tamar and why are you talking about her? Well, her story in the Bible is very interesting to me. Now, Tamar is a young woman who married a man named Ur. Ur was the son of Judah. Judah was the son of Jacob or Israel. That means that he was Joseph's brother, not Joseph, father of Jesus, but Joseph with the colorful coat. Okay? So the story goes that Judah married a woman, they had 3 children, and their eldest son was named Ur. Tamar was picked by Judah to marry Ur. Now, we don't know much about Ur in the Bible. There are really no great descriptions of him except this: he was wicked and God killed him. Now, can you imagine you get mentioned in the Bible and the one thing is said about you is that you were wicked and God killed you? God killed you. Okay, so that says a lot about Ur, in my opinion. Poor Tamar, can you imagine being a young woman married to a man so wicked that God killed him? Can you imagine what she may have endured at the hands of her husband? I bet he was probably mentally, physically, emotionally abusive toward her. I can only draw that conclusion. You know, God killed him. Okay? Genesis 38. Read it. So Tamar is now in a predicament where women were not allowed, or they couldn't, or didn't have any means to really take care of themselves outside of what? The world's oldest profession, right? But Tamar, instead, she stayed with the family. She wanted to stay with the family. And Judah even made her a promise. He said, if you stay with the family, I will give Onan, my second son, to you. He can impregnate you so that your husband will have an heir. That's what was done in those days. It's called like a Levirate marriage. Or Levirate marriage, where a man's brother or close relative would take on the widow and impregnate her so that the man who passed away would have an heir. Yeah, that was their practice. So Judah gave Onan to Tamar, and they consummated their relationship. However, Onan proved to be greedy and selfish, and he purposely did not impregnate Tamar. So he would go through the act, but then he would spill his seed on the ground so that she would not get pregnant by him. And God got mad at him. He didn't like him either. He killed him too. So Judah, so far, the 2 wicked sons, God killed. God himself killed. Yeah. Okay, so we're not done yet. Judah has a 3rd son. Okay? But the 3rd son is much younger. And he tells Tamar, oh, if you stay with the family, when he becomes of age, I'm going to give you to him. And then he can impregnate you so that your husband will have an heir. And why was it so important for her husband to have an heir? It's so that that son could then grow to take care of his mother, so that she would have someone who would be able to provide for her in her old age. This is why Tamar, stays with this family. They're well off. She needs someone to take care of her, because again, women were not able to really care for themselves in those days. So Tamar stays with the family. She waits until the youngest son matures, and then Judah goes back on his promise and does not give him to Tamar. And so Tamar is left stuck now wondering about her future and what her future holds. So she thinks about it and she says, okay, I've got to do something. In the meantime, Judah's wife has passed away and he's lonely. He starts traveling a little bit. And so Tamar finds out he's going to a nearby town. So she disguises herself. She takes off her widow's clothes, okay, which is probably black, it's probably drab, probably dusty, dirty, I don't know. But she takes off all that garb and she disguises herself as a harlot, as a prostitute, in a town in between where they were from and where Judah was headed. So she hides, so to speak, in plain sight, making sure that she's in the path in which Judah's going to travel so he sees her. And when he does see her, he's pleased with what he sees. And so he comes in to where she is, he lays with her, and he says, you know what? I'm going to take care of you. I'll send back a goat or something like that to you. And she's like, you're just going to leave, right? Remember, Judah does not have a good history of keeping his promises. She says, I need something to hold until I get that goat. So, how about I get your staff and your signet cord? Now, the signet cord is something that was unique to each person, much like, I don't know, let's say like a driver's license or something. Excuse me. And then his staff, the top of his staff, of course, would be unique to Judah. So people who knew him would be able to identify those items as belonging to him. So Tamar was smart. She said, "Okay, you can send back a goat to me, but let me get your staff, let me get your signet cord because I want to hold those things as as collateral until you get back to me." And he said, oh, "Okay, fine." So he goes off, and then Tamar goes back home. She takes off all the disguise and she puts back on her widow's clothing. So Judah sends a servant out to look for her where she was, and he can't find her anywhere. And he goes back to Judah and says, "That woman that you were with, I can't find her. I was going to give her the goat and get your stuff back, but she's not there." And Judah's like, "Oh well, I don't know what else we can do." So later on, Tamar is visibly pregnant. And word gets back to Judah that she's pregnant. Now he knows he didn't give her to his son, so he starts showing out. "Oh, I can't believe she went out and did this. What a harlot! We're gonna put her to death. We're gonna burn her to death. She ain't had no business out there in those streets doing what she was doing." And Judah comes and says, "I want to know who it is. Who was it that lay with you and got you pregnant?" She said, "Oh, the man that owns these things." And she shows his signet cord and his staff. And he turns he turns on a dime. "Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you know what? You shouldn't be put to death. As a matter of fact, you know what? I went back on my promise. And you're right. You were right in doing what you did. But now you have your heir and you're going to be okay. I'm sorry." So now she doesn't deserve to die because he knew he was in the wrong, right? Why the double standard, Judah? Really? You thought she was a harlot and you lay with her, but you thought she was a harlot and you wanted to burn her. Really? Mm. So, anyway, as the story goes, Tamar is visibly pregnant. She ends up having twins. Now, what's funny is one of the twins started to come out, and the midwife was trying to grab it, but then that baby's hand goes back into the womb, and then the other baby pops out. And so the firstborn was Perez. And the second born, oh, I can't remember the second born baby's name. But yeah, they were twins. And so why is Tamar's story so significant in the Bible, you may ask? And why is this story placed where it is in the Bible in the midst of telling the story about Joseph and his brothers Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers. All of a sudden, here's this story about this woman named Tamar and her interaction with Judah. Judah's not the star here. Joseph is the star, right? Mm, the reason why Tamar's story is mentioned and why it is so significant is because Tamar is one of 4 women who is mentioned as part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. So if you go to Matthew chapter 1, I believe it is, and they're listing out the genealogy of Christ, Tamar is mentioned by name because her son Perez is also in the lineage of Jesus. So that is why her story is so important, even though it's in the midst of all the chaos that was going on in between with Joseph and his brothers. But just think about, can you imagine how Tamar must have felt? How vulnerable she must have been. So, what do you think? Was she shrewd? Was she manipulative or conniving? Or was she smart in what she did in tricking her father in law into impregnating her? What she had to endure. We don't know what she may have had to endure again at the hands of her husband that was so wicked, God killed him. But I personally think that Tamar was very smart in what she did. She did what she did in an effort to survive. What options did she really have? You know, back in those days too, it was very difficult for a woman to get married again, even if she were a widow, because she was considered spoiled, so to speak. So yeah, her story was just very interesting to me. Her story is like the story of many other women who are controlled and manipulated by men. She showed a lot of bravery in what she did because had she been found out, you know, Judah was ready to burn her. Had she not asked for the signet cord and the staff to prove that she had been with him, Tamar would have been killed without question. And it's a shame, but it's true. Anyway, I think there's a lot that we can learn from from Tamar. I mean, it seems like Judah reneged on his promises to her because it's almost like he was blaming her for the death of his sons, but his sons were the ones that were wicked. Um, I was glad that she asked for that pledge of his promise because Judah showed himself to not be trustworthy. And he was ashamed for the sins that he had committed. So I enjoyed that story of Tamar simply because it showed that, you know, she was able to survive in a time where her thoughts, her feelings didn't matter. Didn't matter at all. Her life was in the hands of this man, her father-in-law, and there was nothing else she could do. But she survived. She did what she needed to do to survive, and because she did, her son ended up part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. And so that's Tamar's story. That's why it's important in the Bible. That's where it's kind of why it's kind of um, snuck in, so to speak, in the midst of all the things going on with Joseph and his brothers. I'm glad that we have chapter 38 to talk about this woman and the courage it took for her to defy the power structure under which she lived and destroy that patriarchy a little bit, at least humble it down a little bit, you know? Anyway, that's the Bible story for today, and I hope to be back with another one very soon. Take care, everybody. Have a blessed and wonderful day. Bye-bye.